had already succeeded with Ruto until Baba and his government of greed came to save William Ruto. I do not want to go further than to say, whenever freedom has been at bay, whenever freedom has been threatened, from slavery to the Second World War, to France when they took over liberty, that every time freedom has won, every time liberty has won. And I want to tell William Ruto, I want to tell Ruto and all your guns and all your policemen and all your men who you are detailing to go out to conclave, you will never win over freedom and the right of people to be free and to aspire to be the best people they can. People forget, just before the Second World War, Adolf Hitler had friends. Adolf Hitler had Mussolini and others who thought that his view of the world was important. That if there was no Roosevelt, or there was no Stalin or Churchill, the world as we know it would not be the world. Adolf Hitler had enough choir masters that banned the Jews and banned the lands and take over all the freedom and take everything from the world, so that Hitler was a god unto himself. He was stopped by the forces of good. Winston Churchill himself said that democracy is the worst form of freedom, but it's the best we've got. The free world, the world that we are fighting for, our children are fighting for in this nation, is rooted on democracy, rooted on freedom and liberty. And those ideals have got many more graves than William Ruto can dig. They have been buried in the hills of France, and they have been killed in the waterways of England and the Pacific Ocean. And people died for there to be liberty and for there to be freedom. Revolutions, the French Revolution, all the revolutions are never brought because they want to be brought. They are brought so that people have a better government. The people can enjoy freedom. The people can stand up and sing, to my country I love to thee. Where did this William Ruto come from that Hitler did not? Where did this William Ruto come from that everybody now thinks that this God has been born? They have fallen. Many William Rutos have fallen. And they fall by their sword. Hitler fell on a suicide tablet, a coward. I want to say here today that even apartheid, South Africa, had a legal framework. There were laws as young that made black men short. Black men could not go to a toilet under the law. The way you are describing our young people being taught and being held by laws made by men to sit over them does not make it just. People have Mandela's words, it was a long road to freedom. Let me say this and let me say it loudly. Sasyong, long after you are gone, the liberty of these young Kenyans will live. These ones that you are now calling mislost or misdirected, the ones who stood on their own and stopped a whole nation. Even you, the man you are calling Raila Odinga, I know him longer than you. Raila Odinga never got to the CBD. He never stopped Nairobi after 5 years of being in the opposition. These young people have brought down and stopped Kenya to a standstill, not once, severally, because they are committed, they are tribeless, they are leaderless, they believe in their mission. And for as long as there is a God in heaven, you will not be able to stop them. And no revolution has been stopped, either by Hitler's bullets or those of the apartheid South Africa. They were bigger and stronger. Idi Amin was worse than William Ruto. I can't understand, Sasyong, why you'd want your name to be read years from now by your grandchildren as a traitor to the children of this nation. What have they done to you? If you have not been able to fulfill your life as well as you could, let your children do it for you. Step aside, as they told Baba. Baba, step aside and let us deal with Ruto. They had already succeeded with Ruto until Baba and his government of greed came to save William Ruto. I do not want to go further than to say that history is littered with books that can teach some of the people who are speaking here common basic history, that whenever freedom has been at bay, whenever freedom has been threatened, from slavery to the Second World War to France when they took over liberty, that every time freedom has won, every time liberty has won. And I want to tell William Ruto, I want to tell Ruto and all your guns and all your policemen and all your men who you are detailing to go out to conclave, you will never win over freedom and the right of people to be free and to aspire to be the best people they can.
Thank you so much. And we shall also just be visiting that question of where we are at in terms of our security. Just last week, Brian Karuki's working mass was held. Barely after the fresh cloud of soil has settled on Albert Ojwang's grave, we had, as you mentioned, also Bridget, the 12-year-old girl from Ndumberi village in Kiambu, shot dead while watching TV. Questions are being asked around it. Dennis Mutuma Mwangi shot dead as well outside his home in Kiambu County as well. Laban Kamau shot dead in Ndumberi as well. Clearly, where we at, we need to ask ourselves, are we safe? And are our days stitched with concerns of just of survival? How do we also find, and we need to question ourselves, how do we find ourselves in this particular space? But we have Honorable Raila Odinga, who has been calling for a national conclave. He says intergenerational national conclave, that we should try and have that particular space so that we can interrogate some of these niggling worries that are hanging on the rafters of our minds, like the survival for our own lives. We don't know where if it's a shooting to the leg to maim or not extent that will go, because people have been saying even Rex Masai was shot on the leg and he bled copiously until he died. If you don't have, the urgent and that urgent medical attention, it can be life-threatening at the end of the day. But the president quite categorically said, those who attack, and I quote him, those who attack our police, those who attack our security men and women, those who attack our security installation, including police stations, that is a declaration of war. That is terrorism. We're going to deal with you family. We cannot have a nation that is run by terror. We cannot have a nation that is governed by violence. We cannot, and it will not happen under my watch. And I had the honor, of course, of interviewing Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, who was in Kahawa West Law Courts, standing shoulder to shoulder with Peter Kinyanjui and Wanjiku Thiga, who are facing terrorism charges leveled against them by the state over last week's protests, the previous week, defending them as their senior counsel. So we want to interrogate this issue as well. How do you describe what is a terrorist act? Is attacking a police station a terrorist act? Because we've seen ATPU being deployed on the ground. We've seen special tactical unit being deployed on the ground. Where do we find ourselves saying this is a terrorism act? Let me invite Honorable Wilson Sossion briefly. Kindly remember to unmic, unmute yourself.